And I know the Department of Justice will be appealing this in very short order. So maybe James Comey should pump the brakes on his victory lap.
Pump the brakes. That was the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt's message to James Comey after he and New York Attorney General Letitia James's indictments were dismissed today. In a reel posted on his Instagram, Comey shared this message about the case.
This case mattered to me personally, obviously, but it matters most because a message has to be sent that the President of the United States cannot use the Department of Justice to target his political enemies. I don't care what your politics are, you have to see that as fundamentally un-American and a threat to the rule of law that keeps all of us free.
All right, joining us now here in the arena, Miles Taylor. He served as Chief of Staff at the Department of Homeland Security in the first Trump administration, authoring that anonymous New York Times op-ed criticizing the president. And of course, in April, President Trump ordered, Miles, an investigation into you. Thank you so much for being with us. And I think my first question to you is whether you're relieved about what happened today, in that the system seemed to work in a certain way. How did you feel in reaction to it?
Well, Casey, I would like to say that I'm celebrating here, but the honest answer is that I'm not. I mean, not only is the administration saying that they are going to appeal this, but even if they don't, this whole episode was a body blow for the rule of law. I mean, just the fact that the President of the United States was able to initiate federal investigations into his critics by social media post shows you how easy this is to do. And of course, the process is the punishment. They don't even care part of the time if they lose these cases in court, because they know people will lose their jobs and their livelihoods and their personal security just from going through the investigation. So what I would compare it to, Casey, is it's like the raptors, the velociraptors in Jurassic Park. Yeah, at the beginning of the film, they were running into doors, but they eventually learned how to open the doors. And that's how I think of these bungled prosecutions. By next year, Trump's DOJ is going to learn how to open the doors, and they'll be a much deadlier opponent in the courts once they do.
Well, and so can you talk a little bit about where things stand with you? Obviously, you and your colleague, Chris Krebs, were both on the receiving end of this call for an investigation. And obviously, in the case of Comey and James, we saw the president call for it, and it was followed by immediate action. Where do things stand with you?
Well, we don't know. I mean, that's the uncertainty. I mean, we know that we're under investigation, and this is the type of thing that can show up on your doorfront any day. Now, what I can say to you with certainty, Casey, is I am not guilty of the thing that the President of the United States told the world I was guilty of: treason, which is a crime punishable by death, a crime delineated in the U.S. Constitution. If I was guilty of treason, it would be very surprising that 6 months later I am free and haven't been detained by my government. But again, we're sort of piñatas, an example of how easy it is for the president to do this. Now, what I do predict will happen, Casey, regardless of what happens in my case or Chris Krebs' case, or if they try to bring charges again against James Comey or Letitia James, what I can predict is there will be investigations into these investigations in the future, because a number of these charges that have been brought against people, a number of the allegations are unconstitutional at their core. Even the idea that the President of the United States can order selective and vindictive prosecutions by tweet or with the stroke of a pen is something I think eventually the courts will find to be unconstitutional. And somewhere between now and then, like I said, there will be investigations into how and why these charges were brought and who knew what when. And there's multiple parts of the Department of Justice and congressional oversight committees that I think will be very interested to know why the justice system was abused for these purposes.
Miles, I mean, watching this all unfold, I mean, what would you say, how do you think Americans should be thinking about the justice system in a broad way? Because there is this massive question of trust, right? And certainly there was a lot of distrust on the right for a long time about the Department of Justice. And now, of course, we're seeing the president and his attorney general operate in a certain way. It's clearly sowing distrust on the left, politically speaking. How do you think about this question, and how do you think Americans should think about it?
Well, look, I think right now the issue for Americans is they have almost entirely lost trust in that justice system. And so for the time being, there are going to be injustices that people need to stand up to. So my first recommendation is collective action. It's really, really important that when these fake charges are brought against people, when the system is weaponized like we just saw today against Senator Kelly, that people stand up collectively and oppose it to show that the intimidation will not work. I mean, we launched something called defiance.org to try to create a place for people to come together to do exactly that. And Casey, in the wake of Donald Trump's threats last week that he would go punish these 6 Democratic lawmakers for urging people to abide by the law and not break the law for the president, we announced that we're going to give grants to whistleblowers who come forward to tell the truth. We can't be afraid, and we can't be afraid to protect them. So that's the first thing, is that Americans need to make sure that they have the backs of people who want to come forward and tell the truth, especially about law breaking. But the second thing, Casey, in the longer term is going to be, we need leaders that demonstrate restraint. We need leaders that will go to the justice system and say, let's lower the temperature. Let's not weaponize these tools to go after our enemies. But I think that's the type of thing that's a long way out.
Before I let you go, I'm glad you mentioned Senator Mark Kelly. We're gonna talk about what's going on with that as the show continues. But what do you think is the same or different about what's going on here? I mean, this is suddenly a Pentagon investigation, obviously distinct from the Department of Justice.
Yeah, I don't think it's any different. They're just using whatever tools they can find available. But look, at the end of the day, these guys are treating this like a video game. I mean, these are real people's lives that are under threat from these accusations of treason and sedition, but they're acting like it's a video game, and they're just, finding whatever way they can to make life difficult. I mean, we should not see it as a coincidence that just days after Mark Kelly goes out and tells service members to abide by the law and to refuse illegal orders, that suddenly an investigation is opened into him. I mean, this is rampant corruption of the highest order of our justice system. And again, like I said before, it may sound like Inception, but there are going to be investigations into these investigations, because there has to be. Our justice system cannot be used as a cudgel against the president's enemies.
All right, Miles Taylor, thanks very much for joining us with your perspective today. I appreciate your time, sir. See you soon.
I should note first that these cases, they're now marked closed in these court records. They are terminated because of this judge's ruling today. This is a judge from Judge Cameron McGowan Curry. She was specially brought in to look at this question of whether Lindsay Halligan, the interim U.S. attorney sent by Maine Justice to the Eastern District of Virginia to lead that prosecutor's office and to secure those indictments, she was looking at whether Halligan had the authority to do that. And what Judge Curry found after extensive legal arguments in court before her is that Lindsay Halligan was not validly acting as a prosecutor. She even cites another case you may have heard of, U.S. v. Trump, in Florida against Donald Trump, which also found the prosecutor was invalid and the indictment had to be thrown out. In this case, the reason here is that the judge says Lindsay Halligan, she had come into this office after a time period had passed where the president could send somebody in as an interim U.S. attorney. That period was 120 days. And then after 120 days, the district court got the power to appoint someone into this top prosecutor job. Lindsay Halligan was not appointed by the court. Someone else had been, and she's not been confirmed by the U.S. Senate. So the judge says now at this time, it's up to the district judges of this court to appoint the next U.S. attorney until someone gets through a Senate confirmation.
Fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.